Okay, so thank you for coming and taking the time to sit and join me tonight for my webinar, which is called Turning Total Loss into Total Fulfillment. So basically, I will start by introducing myself and give you an idea of who I am and what I'm doing here, and why I'm in front of you talking about this. And so I'm a professional coach and I'm a motivational speaker, and I have a story to tell. And generally, my story can be a bit unique. It can be tragic. It can be sad. And it's also very uplifting and inspiring. Right in time for Christmas. I mean, we all have a story at Christmas, don't we? And especially like thinking about Scrooge, for instance, a perfect Christmas story of someone who was in a bad place, let's say, mentally, and managed to turn his life around and create something amazing with his life. And that fits in pretty much with my story in some ways. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't Scrooge. I wasn't that nasty, although some people might think I was. But my story was a bit dark, and it was a bit sad. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that and where I was and where I am now and how I got to that point. And but firstly, I want to start by saying where I am now, so that you've got a good idea of who I am and what I do now and how I can help you and what I can do to help you. So essentially, I'm a professional coach. I specifically work with people, the mindset, and I'm a motivational speaker, and I conduct seminars, workshops, group coaching, and speaking events and things like that. So, and I tend to work one-to-one with my clients, and both, whether that be in private or whether in the workplace. I work with teams as well in the workplace and things like that. And I'll go through all of that as well at the end, and I will go into a lot of detail exactly how I work, how I can help you, and the specific process and philosophy that I use when I coach people and work with people and stuff like that. Because I use a specific process called the core energy coaching process, which is a unique and inspiring process, which when practiced and brings out the very best in you. And it's what I now practice in my life. It's now also what I do as a coach, helping coach and teach my clients the same philosophy, so that they also have the tools to create the life that they want in their world. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So, but firstly, I think it's important to go back. Again, like the Scrooge story, we can go back and look at the past. But I mean, but we're not going to have the ghosts tonight. We're just going to talk about an uplifting journey from where I was to where I am now. So the story started, funny enough, when I was born. But no, I actually had a very good upbringing. And I had a very loving upbringing, a good family. I went to private school. I had good education, lots of love, holidays, everything I could ever want. And but the story, my life, I should say, went off track a little bit as I reached my early teens, and I found myself getting quite badly bullied at school. And it was my first experience of racial bullying, because I'm half Jewish. My father was Jewish, my mother was Christian, and I was badly bullied because of that. And it put me in a very bad place mentally, emotionally, and in every other way, really. And it led to me feeling excluded and quite bad, quite low. And I left that school, went to another school, and I managed to pull myself out of that mindset a little bit. I had a very good sense of humor. I used to joke around a lot and play around, and I made a lot of friends. But what it did do is it created a mindset where I started developing a set of beliefs and attitudes which were unhelpful. I didn't realize that at the time, but at the time I started knocking around with kids who just wanted to mess around and who were into things that probably weren't as pro-social as I probably should have been into. And it led me into a sort of mindset where I wanted to be included. And I think that was a byproduct of being bullied, because it made me feel excluded. So I was focused very much on being included. And because I didn't go to school in a local area, I didn't have my close friends around me that I did when I was growing up initially. So I seek that out in other ways. And it was when I left school that I got myself involved in a gang of football hooligans, for want of a better word. It was what I called a casual scene. It was like the Mods and the Rockers. It was like a culture scene, a cult scene at the time. But it got part of that scene is it's drugs, violence, that sort of thing. So you're involved in very similar to you, Lee. Okay, cool. And I ended up sort of embroiled in this new lifestyle. And as you go, you start developing more and more beliefs and attitudes, which at the time you think serve you, but often later on in life, you look back and you realize they actually didn't. And they created a lot of problems, not just for you, but for all the people around you. And I found myself sort of developing a mindset or a persona as to where I wanted to be accepted. So, and at the time, and now looking back, I realized this is sort of the early part of my psychological abilities to use the mind, like I do now for good, but in those days I was doing it for bad. I realized I had the ability to sort of mold myself into whatever I wanted to be and become that. And so I decided at that early age, I was about 15, 16, that I wanted to be the main guy in the firm and like within the gang and all of that. And so I decided to create that mindset, create that personality. And I did. I set about doing that and becoming, I decided that at an early age, I wanted a reputation as being number one or whatever it is, of being respected. Because I used to see all of these older guys in there who, in my eyes at the time, used to get respect. I now realize it wasn't respect, it's fear. But at the time, I thought it was respect. And that, in my eyes, was how you got respect. And because I didn't want to be this bullied kid or excluded person, I wanted to be popular. I wanted to be the person everyone looked up to. I wanted to be someone, not feared, but people, when you walked in a room, everyone was, oh, it's him, that sort of thing. I wanted that. Now I don't, but when you get it, you don't want it. But at that time, that's what I wanted. So I set about creating that. And for the next 10 years, I was addicted to that scene. I became absolutely consumed by it. I lived it, breathed it, and did everything in that scene. I was addicted. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of positives attributed and attached to that. I made some very, very good friendships during that time. And I had some great experiences and times, but there was also a lot of negativity attached to it. There was a lot of violence, for instance. There was a lot of drug taking. There was a lot of hurt and pain caused sometimes by me to other people. And also as a byproduct of my actions, for instance, to my family, people who cared about me. They saw me going down a road that was destructive and they couldn't really do much about that. And looking back on that now, it creates a lot of regret, because regret is obviously, I don't regret my actions as such, because in terms of how it led to me turning out, because everything happens for a reason. But I do regret the pain and the hurt I've caused to people. And that's something that I can't change. So I regret those things and how that affected them. So it led me into a lifestyle where I was literally consumed every single day of being this number one. And ultimately, that's where I got. I achieved that. I became that respected, feared person who everyone thought was like the main guy, or one of the main guys, I should say. And just, was living for that weekend, for that, to be involved in that scene. And it was about, not just about having a fight. The fighting was actually very small, very minor part of it. It's more about the camaraderie, the clothes, the being involved in a scene that you thought you looked cool in. At the time, you know, walking down the road with a mob of guys and like you look cool, you think that, and you walk in a pub and everyone looks around, you know, that sort of thing, and it becomes addictive and consuming, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and like I said, there's a lot of good parts of that, but there's a lot of negative parts of it as well. So I ended up going to prison for a fight. It wasn't anything serious. It was a small fight, but I got 3 months in prison for that. And I did 3 months. It was actually 8 months. I did 3 months and got out. And I also received a ban from football for 10 years. And that sort of pushed me in another direction, because then I had to sort of make a decision to sort of change my life or move in a different direction. And I sort of needed that excitement now, because I needed something to replace the excitement that I'd found there. I'd lost that sort of connection with that life, and I needed to replace that somehow at the time. And I was only 25, so I was still quite young and still quite immature. And I needed to sort of move in, find something that replaced that. I hadn't addressed the beliefs and attitudes that had led me into that situation in the first place at that stage. And so I still had pretty negative beliefs and attitudes bubbling under the surface. Even though I wasn't actually involved in anything like fighting or anything like that, I found myself moving in a different direction and getting involved in the club scene, taking drugs, ecstasy. And I found the love of my life at that stage, and so on. I thought it was the love of my life. It turned out not to be later, but that's a different story. But it was during that period, I thought I'd sorted my life out. I thought I'd got myself into a much more healthy frame of mind. But then I ended up in another fight, and I ended up back in prison. And it was when I ended up back in prison that I lost my girlfriend, who I loved. And I got myself into a terrible state. I had a breakdown over that. And during that time in prison, it was a massive time of soul searching, and really sort of trying to pull myself together again. And I managed to do that. And I managed to get out of prison. I was in there for 2 years this time. And I got out. And at that stage, I thought to myself again, similar to before, I'd solved my problems. I'd become clear of all the problems. I was not going to get in trouble again. I was, not going down that sort of road again. I was going to get myself sorted, get myself a good job, blah, blah, blah. And I did. I got myself a job working for a car dealership. And I was doing very, very well with them. I found myself a new girlfriend, and I was doing very, very well with this car dealership. I became their top salesperson there. And I was working for about a year or so, about 18 months or so. And this time, I actually ended up getting in trouble again with the police, but this time it was for something I hadn't done. And the reason it happened is I went to a work Christmas party, and a fight occurred, not between me, but between two other groups of people. And my girlfriend got involved. And the girlfriend of the guy who was in the fight, one of the guys in the fight who worked in the same branches that I worked in, had an asthma attack. And she got involved, my girlfriend, to help the girl. And in the process had a go at the guys who were beating up this other guy. So someone come and told me about that. And I've come out and at the latter end of this, the fight had finished by now. And as I've walked back into the hotel where the Christmas party was, and these guys all turned on me, and because of what my girlfriend had said to them. And I ended up getting beaten up. I got beaten up quite badly by 4 guys because of their attack me, basically because my girlfriend had called them a bunch of animals. I got arrested for GBH with intent. I could not understand why I got arrested, but I did. It turned out later in court, long time after court actually, that the reason I ended up getting arrested is because the police were not happy with what I'd got given last time round, because I'd built this reputation for myself during the football. So that all of that time I'd spent building that relationship, reputation, I'd built this reputation with the police as well. So they wanted to really get me done. And when I got arrested for the last fight before that, I got 2 years. And it turned out that they wanted me to get a lot more than that, because they thought that I should have got more for what I did. And I was guilty of that offence, definitely. But I only got 2 years, and they thought I should have got more. And because of that, they wanted me to be convicted of something else. And that's why I found out later that I got arrested for this one here. So anyway, I went to court for that. And during the court process, there was no forensics. There was no CCTV that supported their case. There was that supported mine, but it got lost. Essentially, I got convicted of assault on the basis of my previous offending. And because it was a similar line of offending to what I'd done in the past, violence, basically, there was a sentence called the IPP sentence. Now, I don't know if any of you know about this sentence. If you do, pop it in the box. But it's now outlawed, and it's now illegal. It was brought in initially in the mid-90s for sex offenders. But it was then rolled out for anybody who had been in trouble twice with violence of any nature. So if you'd been in trouble, so you'd had a fight 10 years before and then got arrested again 10 years later, you could be given essentially a life sentence. And that would mean an IPP. So an IPP sentence is, you don't get a release date. It stands for indeterminate public protection. So that's what they gave me. And that sentence, yes, it's not dissimilar, Lee. Lee just said it's 3 strikes and you're out in the US. It's not dissimilar. In the UK, they have a similar one where it's 2 strikes. So it's not a dissimilar sort of thing. But yeah, they give you a minimum term of what you serve. And you have to serve that minimum term before you can apply for parole. But the problem is that in order to get released, you have to demonstrate and prove to the parole board that you're never going to offend again. Now, how do you do that? How can you prove that you're never going to offend ever again? It's an impossible task. And currently, the prisons in the UK here are full up with guys who are just languishing in there because they can't prove that they can get out. Because the issue is, if you've got a mental health issue, for instance, and you're on antidepressants, you're seen as a risk and they won't let you out. So I was left, I was given this horrible sentence. And like I said, thankfully it's no longer, I wouldn't be sitting here now if it was still in existence, but it's no longer in existence. Anyway, so I was given this horrible sentence, and I was told as I was sent to prison that I was never ever going to see light a day again. I was told that that's it for me. You're never getting out of prison. And I was told that day. My mother was also told that, and I didn't know at the time, but I found out later on that she had cancer, and she knew that she had cancer. And she said to my cousin, I'm not going to be here when he gets out. I need you to look after him. But I never knew this until many years later. But at that time, I don't know what I thought. I was in a mindset of numbness. And anyway, I went to prison. But I still believed. I did, even though everybody was telling me that I would never get out of prison, I still had the belief that I would. And I sort of knew that I had to sort of change me. See, the thing is, I could have easily been a victim. And I was a victim of an injustice on the surface of it. And anyone looking outwardly inward and say, well, look, you were found guilty of something you didn't do. You're a victim. The way I see it, and this is the way I've had to see it, is because if I had chosen to be a victim and ignored my past, what would that make me? A hypocrite. Because it's my past that led me to that stage. It was my beliefs and attitudes that led me to that situation. Even though I wasn't guilty of that particular incident, it's the karma that I created from those negative experiences in the past that created that situation. Had I not built that reputation with the police, had I not created those beliefs and attitudes, which created a mindset that, you know, I have to stand up to bullies or whatever, I would never have got involved in any sort of confrontation in the first place, or found myself even in that situation. So there's a lot of factors involved, and I can't turn around and call myself a victim when I created that situation inadvertently myself. So I chose not to be a victim. I chose not to see myself as one, and I chose to take responsibility for my thoughts, for my beliefs and actions. And so when I was in prison, and I knew that I had to do something to get myself out of prison, I thought this is my opportunity now to start working on my mindset, start working on my beliefs, my attitudes, and everything about that. And this is a long time before I ever even thought about becoming a coach. But right at the start of that sentence, I enrolled in every course, what we call here in the UK, offending behaviour courses. Now, in order to get yourself out of an IPP sentence, prison sentence, you've got to basically do course after course after course. And it's a laborious, painful process because you're uncovering every element of your life, every element of your thinking, and it can be very hard at times. And you have to look at everything and you have to change things. And I always say it's like a ball of string. We develop beliefs throughout our lives. So from when you're a child, like I did when I was a kid at 15, and those beliefs become dormant so that they keep regurgitating themselves throughout your life. So you get a ball of string, you unravel that ball of string until you find the root of that belief. And then you find that, and then you change it to something that's not more serving of you now. It can be a hard task to do, especially if you've been through a lot of trauma and you're young as a kid. But it helps you move forward and change negative beliefs or unhelpful attitudes that hold you back in life. So I found myself in that situation. So I was working on my mindset to create new beliefs, new attitudes that serve me and help me move forward, and ultimately got me out of prison. Because at that stage, I still saw a future. I wanted to get myself out of prison for my family, for my life. I wanted to live a life. I wanted to create the things that I wanted to do. Because ultimately, I'm a good guy. I'm not this nasty, negative person. And I've always been that way. But I created a persona which made me look that way. So a lot of people might see that persona and think, well, he was a not very nice guy. And that's understandable. But underneath all of that, anyone who truly knew me wouldn't see that side of me. They saw the real side of me, the nice guy, the caring side, the generous guy, the loving guy, the guy who loves cats. So that side of me was the real me. The side of me that I created was not real me, but I became it. And that's essentially the nuts and bolts of what I do now with the coaching, and what I will come on into in a minute, because we create our own realities in life. And if I created that reality in a negative sense, it means also I can create a positive, wonderful reality as well. And we all have this power to do that. We create the world we live in. We create what we experience and choose to experience. And that's through what we think, believe, and our attitudes. So if you're living a life which isn't serving you, it's because of what your beliefs and attitudes are telling you about that situation. And if you can learn to change them and adapt them to things that actually work for you in any given situation or circumstance, then you're halfway there to creating the life that you really want. And that's essentially what I do as a coach. I help you do that. So carrying on with my story, I'm in prison and I've now reached the 2-year mark of the 6-year tariff, when my life changed forever. My mum and I were always like that. She was my rock. And essentially, without her, I don't think I could have coped up to that point. Without their support, her and my mum and dad visiting me every week, doing everything for me, sending me clothes. The love I got from them was not, considering the amount of rubbish I've put them through in their lives, with all the fighting and the drugs and the prison and everything, and the negativity and all of the stuff that I put on their doorstep. They always stuck by me. They always loved me, no matter what. Always supported me, and so I was lucky to have that, because a lot of people don't have that. And so I was very conscious of that. And so anyway, suddenly at Christmas 2013, 21st of December, she died. And it was 2 weeks before that we found out that she'd got cancer. So it was that quick. It was literally 2 weeks from finding out she had it to when she went. And it turned my life upside down. I didn't fall apart because I couldn't. I had to keep my head together because my dad was still out there and he still needed me, and I had to keep my self together for the funeral because he couldn't cope. He was in a bad way. So I had to arrange the funeral from prison, which I wouldn't recommend to anyone because it's not a fun process, especially when you're sitting in a cell 23 hours a day. Thankfully, the prison did help me a lot. I attended the prison in cuffs to a prison officer. And the inmates were all wonderful as well. And it showed the difference. I mean, it doesn't matter what color you are, what faith you are, where you're from, doesn't matter. Everybody came together to support me. And it was a wonderful sort of experience to experience that. I moved from the prison I was in, which was some distance from where I lived, just after Christmas in January. And I moved to another prison, which was closer to where I lived. And exactly 3 months to the day after my mother died, I was on the phone to my father one morning, and he died as well. He died literally as I was talking to him on the phone from a cardiac arrest, and literally dropped down, dead. And it was just unbelievable. And I sort of get, again, I mean, I'm an only son as well. I had to sort of keep my head together again to sort of focus on, dealing with the things like I had to deal with, like the funerals and like the house. What was going to happen to the cats? We had 21 cats. Well, actually, it was more. When I went to prison, we had 21 cats. When the RSPCA went in to take them, there was about 74, but that's another story. They sort of blossomed. And my mum actually said when I went to prison, she started hoarding cats to replace me. But okay, that's another story. That'll be in my book if you want to read about that. But anyway, I had to deal with everything. I had to deal with the house. I had to deal with everything that was going on. And I had to keep my head together and get myself out of prison somehow still. So somehow I managed to get through that period. And it was that whole year, that was the March. It was another 6 months later, my last remaining immediate family member died. It was my grandfather. He was 97, sorry. What's that say? I'll have to read that out. Large cat. Oh, you're talking about cats. I'll show you some pictures of my cats on my website. So my grandfather died as well. And within that year, and we're talking about cats, funny enough, I count them as family members. Some people laugh at that sort of stuff, and I'm sure people do. But I see them as family members, and I love them just as much as I would a sibling. And in that year, when I say I lost what I lost 31 family members. Exactly. Pets are family, Lee says. And they are. And I love them just as much as anybody else. And I lost 21 cats. I'd lost my mum, my dad, my grandfather. I lost my home. And I also lost the love of my life. Even though we weren't together, I found out she went off with my best friend. And that broke my heart. It broke my heart, not because I wanted to get back with her, but because she was the only person left in my world who I felt some sort of connection to. And I was sort of probably over it. It's not her fault. I don't hold any grudge to her now because it wasn't her fault. It was the way I expected too much from the situation at the time. And I saw it as a crutch, someone I could speak to, someone I could rely on to talk to. And it broke that trust. And so I lost that as well. And so I felt for the first time in my life completely alone. I had friends, thank God, because without my close friends and loved ones, I wouldn't have got through what I did, because it was them who went into the house and cleared the house out, got the cats rehomed. One of my best friends, my ex-girlfriend, Lucy, was amazing. She actually supported me throughout the whole situation with money, with support, someone to talk to on the phone, all of different things. And by helping with the house, I had to sell the house in the end. So all of these things, a very, very traumatic time to go through. I had to keep myself focused mentally and emotionally. And what I did is, I bottled those emotions up at the time and didn't deal with them until much later in order to get through that situation. And I started working. I was working in the prison. Well, I was working all along. I was working in the prison. But what I did then do is I started working particularly in the teaching sector. Before that, I was working in a warehouse or something like that. And I started working teaching, mentoring, teaching critical reasoning skills. That led me on to realize that I had an aptitude to help people, to working with people, to helping people bring the best out of themselves. Because I was working with young kids from council estates and gangs who rebelled against authority. But I had the ability to get them to open up. because they had that trust in me. So I managed to get that understanding of like, I've got something here. So it was during that period I did a business course. And during that business course, they asked me to do a business plan. And they said, come up with an idea about a career that you want to do. And so I said life coach out of the blue. It's the first thing that comes to my mind. And I actually started researching coaching, life coaching. And it turned out that all the attributes and skills and talents and stuff like that lend themselves to to be a great coach, I had in abundance. So I thought to myself, well, why not? But then I forgot about it. That was at that stage. I still had a long time to get out of prison. And it was about another 2-3 years later that I actually did get out of prison. By now, I wasn't really thinking about coaching. I was thinking about sorting my life out. I did a degree in there as well. So I was occupying my mind in positive ways, exercising, things like that. And this is after I had that breakdown. I had a sort of mental breakdown again. After the same girl. The same girl's given me 2 mental breakdowns in one life, but never mind. I got myself together, and I came out of jail in 2017 feeling really good. But I mean, in myself, in a sense that I was very popular within the prison estate with both officers and prisoners, because they had respect for me. And it was something I had not had before, because the difference between the respect and the fear is palpable. This was genuine respect, because people respected the way I'd held it together, and I'd been humble, and I'd dealt with the things that I'd had to face in a positive and constructive way. And everyone noticed that. And everyone was like, I don't know if I could have done that, but everyone can do that. Until you're put in that position, you don't know if you're going to be able to do that. But we can. We're all strong. We're all resilient. We're all determined. And that's one of the things I help people understand. Now, when I got out of prison, it was like, wow, everything sort of just hit me. The emotions, all the stuff I'd buried before, everything was just there. And because nothing was the same. My family had obviously gone, and I had no home, I had no job, I had no anything. Most of the people I knew after 6 years of being in prison, I was in 6 years, by the way, had moved on in some way. So I didn't know where I was turning. I didn't know which way to go in life. So it took me about a year of ambling along, and I sort of went back into a little rut mentally, emotionally, and started hanging around in places where I weren't really happy and stuff like that. And after that year, I thought, I've got to get myself out of this. And so what I did is I'd been seeing a therapist, and I'd had counselling to try and deal with the emotional fallout from it all. And I'll be honest with you, that wasn't helping me as much as I thought it would. It did help me in some ways, but not as much as I wanted it to. I felt it was making me feel worse than I wanted someone to build me up, not make me focus on the negative side of things. So I found coaching, and the coaching was amazing. It completely got me out of myself. It completely empowered me, made me feel confident, changed my mindset completely to get me into a much more proactive and constructive way of thinking. And it made me realize that this was for me. This is what I wanted to do as a career. So I looked it up. I started researching online. And at first, I was just going to do one of those diplomas you see online, £1,500. You see them online all the time. But it was actually my coach who said to me, Mark, don't do that. If you're going to do this, do it properly and go to the very best you can find. Research it and find the best you can find and invest it. It's going to cost you money. Thankfully, I had some money together from selling the house. So I still had some money to look after me. Otherwise, I would have been in a lot worse situation than I was then. I was in a lucky situation in that sense. So I managed to find IPEC. Now, IPEC are the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching. And they're the #1 coaching school in the world. And I enrolled in them. They're based in America. Don't know if Lee knows them, but yeah, they're based in America, but they're worldwide. And they teach a specific philosophy and way of being, which is very different from the majority of other coaching schools and philosophies and practices that coaches use. in that it focuses holistically on all areas of your life. So it works on the core. And it's called the core energy coaching process. So it works literally on every element or aspect of your being. And it works to optimize that so that you're continuously and not always performing at your very, very best in all areas of your life. And I enrolled on that course and I started working with them. And it was 2 years later that I graduated as a professional coach. And it changed my life completely in every area. And now I live that philosophy. You learn it and then you practice it. And the practicing takes time, because if you're not ready to do it, you won't do it. You've got to be committed. You've got to be dedicated and committed to do this stuff, because if you're not, you won't learn it, you won't practice it, and you won't move forward. But when you do practice it consistently every day, eventually what happens is you become it as well. And when you become it, that's when things change. Everything changes. Life changes. And you manifest everything that you ever want in your life. And that's where I am now. Amazing things that I never even dreamt of happening to me now. I'm winning awards, for God's sake. I won an award for turning my life around from the local authorities. Stupid things. But I mean, I never thought I'd be a motivational speaker. I never ever dreamt that. But I've been doing that. I've never thought I'd be writing my book. I'm writing my book now. I'm writing for magazines. I'm writing all of these things. They come from what you manifest. And the philosophy that I now work with, which I've learned through with IPEC, the Institute of Professional Excellence and Coaching, is now the centerpiece of my practice, which I use with clients. So I essentially do the same as what I went through and what I learned with clients, and I teach them the same philosophy. So what I'm going to do now, having told you about the dark side of my life, I'm going to start telling you about these wonderful things now I use to create the magic in my life now. And I've never done this before. I've never spoken about this. When I coach people or work with people, I don't talk about the nuts and bolts, especially. Now, the way I work, I do go into certain details, but not in complete detail. So I will share with you some of the details of how this all works and how my process with clients works and what you'd get out of that, essentially, so that you'd understand how it works for me and how I changed learning this stuff. So, so essentially you're learning, you're putting into a tangible way the intangible, such as energy. And when I say energy, I'm talking about things like thoughts, your emotions, your feelings. Because during a normal day, none of us realize consciously what we're really thinking most of the time. 90% of the time, we're in there. We're not realizing what we're actually thinking or telling ourselves about any given situation. We're just operating and going through life on autopilot, the subconscious. Yeah, you're correct. And so only 10% of the time, we're consciously choosing what we want to think and feel. And most of you, I'm sure, will know this because you're aware enough to, be here in the first place. You would have read books and stuff like that. It's our awareness, our consciousness that creates the life that we want. But if that's the case and it's that simple, why don't we all do it? Because it's not as simple as that. And if manifesting our life that we really want was as simple as just thinking, it is hard. It's very hard. And this is why people have coaches, and me included. I've got a coach. And if it was simple as just believe or dreaming or saying, yeah, tomorrow I want to create that, we'd all do it, wouldn't we? Yeah, you'll get a recording. You'll get a recording, HS. Yeah, don't worry. You'll get one sent to you. No worries. If you leave, you'll get a recording anyway, so don't worry. Sorry, I was just replying to someone. Basically, yeah. So you've got to live your life and breathe it, feel it, act it, live it, and everything that's in part of your life has to be optimal. Now, one of the core things, and I'm jumping ahead here a little bit in terms of the work I do. No problem. Thanks for coming. One of the core things I do here in terms of my philosophy that I work with people is I teach you how to optimize your 6 core areas. Now, some coaches will say there's 4. I say there's 6. Well, IPEC say there's 6. And those core areas are mental, your mental influences, emotional, physical, social, environmental, and spiritually. Now, if one or more of those areas isn't working for you, and something's draining you in one or more of those areas, guess what? All of those areas become drained. Yeah, not dissimilar. And you become drained in all of those areas. So you learning which areas are not working for you in some way helps you then increase your energy, or find ways to increase your energy. Because let's face it, it's not easy to just click your fingers and increase your energy. For instance, if you're suffering from some physical illness, which really makes you feel low all the time, it's not going to be easy to suddenly just switch that off. But you can work and find ways to increase that energy around certain elements of your life that are draining you and creating that drain across the board that stops you performing at your very best. And that's one of the core things that I do with the clients. But however, going back to how I start with clients, essentially what I do when we start working together, and I'm going to show you something, is sorry, I'm drinking water. I start by working doing an attitudinal assessment with the clients. And that attitudinal assessment is incredibly accurate. People are scared by how accurate it is sometimes. It shows us all the things in our lives which are working for us and which aren't working for us. The perceptions, the beliefs, their attitudes, all the different things, our expectations, everything that goes on. So we see it, and often the things that we think are creating our problems in life aren't. It's actually something completely different that we hadn't even thought of. And that's why this report here is so amazing, because basically it gives us a very clear idea of what we need to actually address in our lives. And it also explains what energy is and how, a lot of people get confused by this term, and I'll read it for you. Energy leadership specifically is learning how to lead your own energy. Funny enough, it refers to both a particular and unique form of leadership. I'm reading from the book here, by the way, and also literally the process of leading energy so that it works for you rather than against you. So that's essentially what this is. It's learning how to use your thinking. It's a very common sense thing. Use your thinking, your emotions to create the actions that work for you. That's that's in the simplistic terms what this is. And it is fundamentally life-changing. You learn about the anabolic and catabolic energy. Now, a lot of us don't have a clue what that means. Anabolic energy is a building up constructive energy that we all have when we feel good. So if you think something positive, you will feel something positive. And then what happens? The action that follows suit there. So likewise, if you're thinking something negative, that creates catabolic energy. Catabolic energy is where we feel drained. It's a tearing down force. So if you're thinking something like, oh God, this bloody COVID is never going to end, guess what? You're going to feel low. You're going to feel crap. Guess what happens then? Your actions become counterproductive. You don't move forward in the way that you want. So learning about the different types of energy and how you can control that is fundamentally important to being able to create the success that you actually want in your life. The next part of that process is learning about the actual energy levels. And now I work with 7 different energy levels. In a very brief way of explaining them, because of time, I'll define them. Level 1 would be victim level. Level 2 would be conflict level. Level 3 is responsibility. Level 4 is concern. Level 5 is reconciliation. Number 6 is joy. And number 7 is ultimate passion. Now, there's so many different other elements to these levels, but we are them all of the time. We're always going up and down, fluctuating up and down, up and down, up and down. So at any given time. So what generally happens during any given day is we're a mixture of all of these energies going up and down. 1 minute you might feel angry, next minute you feel happy, so on. But what happens is when you have a stress reaction, your energy drops like a stone into a bottom chart, which is full of lower energy, catabolic energy, level 1, level 2 energy, full of victim mentality, full of anger, conflict. And we tend to get stuck in this mentality and it drains us. And then everything that we think comes through the prism of limiting beliefs in our subconscious, fears, assumptions, interpretations. So everything we feel and think is from that cupboard in the background, the subconscious, which is not serving us. And that's where our beliefs and attitudes come from, like the fight I had, which I buried all of these beliefs in the back room somewhere. I had this negative belief that I had to stand up to bullies or something. And every time I was confronted with anything like remotely similar to that situation, bosh, my energy dropped. I was angry, conflict driven. And then this belief would regurgitate. Yeah, you've got to stand up to them. And as long as that belief was present, I was getting myself in trouble. And it was a recycling situation. Kept going around in circles. That's why I kept on getting in trouble. That's why I ended up in prison several times, because I hadn't changed that belief. So by learning how to change your core beliefs, your limiting beliefs, or not necessarily change it, being able to switch them off so that you're in the conscious moment and in control of them. And when you're in a conscious moment, you learn how to raise your energy so that you're not in those realms of catabolic energy, level 1, level 2. You're actually much higher. You're feeling optimistic. You're feeling level 5, for instance, is seeing opportunities. So instead of seeing problems, you're seeing opportunities everywhere you look. You know, instead of feeling victimized, you're feeling loving or taking responsibility for your thoughts and feelings. And when you do that, when you're able to lift yourself out of that horrible area where you're drained and you don't move forward in life, you're able to then start choosing how you want to think, choosing how you want to feel, choosing how you want to experience life as a whole. And you get to create the life that you want. Essentially, that's the core of what I do. I help you learn this philosophy. That's the first point. And I do that in 2 different ways. Through coaching, I work with you over a period of time, 3.5 months, 9 sessions, where you learn, you get the assessment, which is an hour and a half long. You get a debrief, an hour and a half long, a 10-page report, and you get results where, like I said, you get to understand all your perceptions and beliefs and everything in a very clear way. Then you have 9 sessions where I work with you to lift your energy, to increase your energy, so that and help you remove things like fear, anxiety, stress, all the things that hold us back in life. Increase your confidence, so that you're always feeling good. And then in between the sessions that we're working together, we learn this philosophy. And I use this. This is called the Foundations Workbook. It's called, and this is like the Bible to me. It's absolutely fundamentally important. It's got every element of what I teach in there. And it teaches you to firstly learn about your own mind and what makes you tick. And secondly, start making plans, strategies, techniques, creating the things that work for you, learning about your energy, the different 7 levels of energy that are present in all of us, the energy blocks, and how do we remove them. And when you work through this, it's not like turning up for a session one week and going home and forgetting all about that because you've got distractions and everything else going on in your life. What you're doing is you're actually embedding this information. So you're learning it without realizing you're learning it half the time. Because I've got clients sometimes, they don't realize they're learning something. And then suddenly the penny will just drop and they're like, wow, like that. It's amazing. And it really is life-changing. So, and that's the difference. When you're able to create the things that you really want in life, you're able to manifest the things that you really want in life. And that's the beauty of that stuff, because I'm now using that to in my own life, and it's creating the things that I've always wanted. And I've been to hell and back, and that's why my book is now called To Hell and Back and Then Some, because I've been to hell and back, and now I'm doing the then some, because I'm moving on to something much, much more fulfilling in life, because my life is just starting in a lot of ways, because I've lived that part of my life. I've been through the hell and back part of it, and I've experienced everything in that negative sort of way. And I've lost a lot. And, to be able to sit here now and say to you, I feel fulfilled and happy, knowing that I've lost pretty much everything I ever loved, it's not an easy thing to say. It's not something you just come out and say. But the reason I can say that is because I practice that and I live that and I do it every day. And if I can do that, then there's no stopping anybody doing that. despite your circumstances, anyone's circumstances that you live. And that's just the start, because the foundation's it's like building a house. You won't build a house and expect it to stand up without the foundations. That's why it's called the foundations program. So you build the foundations, then you build the house. The next stage after that, that's when I work with advanced. So the next stage with my clients, I start working on the 10 core disciplines. Now, I'm going to shoot through them very quickly because I'm conscious of the time. But I mean, that would come at a later stage. And it's when you've mastered the first part of it. But when you've mastered the first part of that, you can learn 10 core disciplines that, when learned, practice, and become, literally give you the key to success in life, in anything that you do. And it isn't easy. I can tell you that. I do it myself, but it's not easy to practice and live it and become it every single day. I can promise you that. But it's achievable if you're determined and committed to do it, enough to do it. So the first one is being aware and consciously aware. Obviously, awareness is key, because if you're not aware of what you're doing and what's happening around you, and you can't change anything. And you have to be aware of your own mindset in order to sort of make these changes in the first place. Acceptance is second. You have to accept yourself fully and everything that's ever happened to you and gone on around you in order to really move forward with your life. Because if you're holding on to things like resentment or hatred or anything like that, how likely are you going to move forward? Conscious choice is the third one. You've been learning how to choose consciously, using logic, emotion, and intuition. Many of us don't use intuition, surprisingly. We use logic or emotion, very rarely the two combined. So learning to combine all three of them and use them together to create what we want, very important. Trust the process in life. Learning how to trust the process, so that no matter what happens in your life, you know that even if things go wrong, you can cope and you can deal with it, because you're learning, you're growing, you're always moving in the right direction. Authenticity, always important to be yourself, always be the real you. Don't put on a show, put on an act for someone. Fearlessness, when you're fearless, you know that no matter what happens in life, you will cope with it. So it develops confidence. Confidence is the next one. So when you're confident, you can create confidence like that. You can bring up feelings of power, calm, strength, whatever it is, peace. So you can create thoughts of that. You can create feelings of confidence in any given moment. So if you struggle with confidence, that's fundamentally important. Connection, having a connection not only with yourself, but also with the people around you, and knowing that everything is connected to each other. Makes you realize that your role in life is fundamentally important, because if you really want to be the best, you want the world to be the best it can be, then you've got to be the best you can be. You have a responsibility to do that for the world around you. You can't expect everyone else to be the best they can be if you're not being the best you can be. And being present in the moment is fundamentally important as well, because if you're not present in the moment, then you're not in the moment at all, and your mindset is taking care of it all for you. So learning how to be present in a moment is fundamentally important if you really want to perform at your very best in any given situation and create total fulfillment in your life. Because you don't have worries, you don't have stress, you don't have thoughts of the past, nothing, judgment doesn't exist. All of these things, we remove all of that when we're present in the moment. And finally, 100% energetic engagement and commitment to everything that you do. Because without that, you don't progress. These are the 10 core disciplines that I teach my clients. Like I said, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. You've got to be determined and you've got to be committed to do the work. And if you're not, you won't make progress. Simple as that. However, if you are interested in finding out more about what I do as a coach, there's obviously, I'll no commitments to anything. If you don't want to move forward and check me out, that's fine. I'm glad you come along tonight, and I hope you did take something away from it. But if you do want to look on and find out more about what I do, then there's certain things I do, which are, you're more than welcome to follow up. You can check out my website, obviously. I also do a live weekly show on Facebook, which is called the Weekly 10 Show. It's only a 10-minute show, but it's me talking nonsense usually for 10 minutes. So if you want to check in, that's Wednesday UK time, and again, you'll get the details for that in the follow-up email. So yeah, you can check out that. But if you want to look at it up now, it's Marc Singer Coaching on Facebook. Thanks, Lee. I appreciate that. Definitely look me up, and we'll connect. I'm on everything else. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, all of it. So check me all out. I do seminars, I do workshops, groups, speaking events. I do it all. But if you're interested in me coaching you, which is what I really do, that's my bread and butter, then I would love to hear from you. And you can check me out. You can contact me directly on my website, which again, you'll get in the follow-ups. And you can check that out. It's marksingercoaching.co.uk if you want to look at it straight away now. And yeah, you can look me up on there. There's plenty of stuff on there, articles I've written and stuff like that. Oh, and also, if you're interested in getting an advanced copy of my book, it's not finished yet, but it will be soon. I would encourage you to go sign up on my new weekly newsletter, mailing list even, because everybody on there is going to get an advanced copy of that. And again, that's on the website. So if you're interested in signing up and getting an early copy of that, of my book, and finding out more about my story, because I've told you most of that. There's a lot more to it in detail, but I've told you a lot tonight. But if you're interested in finding out a bit more about it all, then sign up on my website and you will get that as well. And I hope to meet some of you in person at some point, especially Lee or wherever you've gone. Yeah, okay. Thanks. And I will love you and leave you as we're nearing the end. But check out the stuff that I've mentioned and research the core energy coaching process online. Check it out with IPEC. It's worth doing so. Even if you don't work with me, it's still worth looking into because it's life-changing. And if you do understand that and start working that, like I said, learning it, practicing it, becoming it, your life changes. You literally are in control of what you want to manifest in your life. So thanks for joining me all tonight. And I hope you've actually taken a bit away from it and it's helped you in some way. Happy Christmas, am I? And thank you for all attending tonight. And I'm going to wish you all good night and a happy Christmas. See you all soon.